Hello, Fanshawe. Welcome to EDI Talks, a series of safe, open discussions on equity-deserving topics. And speaking of safe and open, this morning we are in the Galiwi Circle in the Library Learning Commons. Galiwi is an Oneida word meaning good message, and we're hoping today to bring you some good messages. EDI Talks is hosted by myself, Troy Townsend. I am the Anti-Racism and Inclusion Specialist at Fanshawe. My pronouns are she, her. February is recognized as Black History Month in North America, and today I've invited some guests to share in this conversation with me. And before we get into our discussion, I'm going to let the guests introduce themselves. Starting to my left, we have Jessica.
Hi, my name is Jessica Jordan. I am a student at Fanshawe. I recently completed the Bachelor of Commerce program here at Fanshawe in December, and now I'm in the Public Relations and Corporate Communications program. I'm also a varsity athlete on the women's basketball team here at Fanshawe as well.
And Sheena.
All right, hi. So I'm Sheena Johnson-Brown. I teach at London South in the Business Management program. And I am originally from Jamaica. I've been living in Canada here for the past 6 years, and I am enjoying new experiences and rising to the challenges.
And Omar.
Hi, my name is Omar Smith. I'm a faculty in the School of Hospitality, Tourism and Culinary Arts, and we're located downtown. And I'm really happy to be here to talk about Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome my guests and thank them because I know each one of them has a very, very busy schedule. So thank you for coming on campus and accommodating my request to be with me here today. So we're going to get right into it, and I'm going to ask you some questions. First of all, as I mentioned, it's Black History Month. And what does this mean to you? And what do you think people of non-Black ancestry should know about this month and its significance? And feel free, open forum, so anybody who has a thought.
I'll take that question. I think for me, Black History Month is a period for reflection. Someone might say, why do you need to reflect? And the reason why, for people like me and many others, it's a period of reflection. It's because Black people have a very bad history on the continent. And people tend to think of Black history, slavery, civil rights movement, the Renaissance period, but I tend to look at Black history that predates that. And Africa had great kings and queens, as you should know. Search your history. It will show, if you know not from whence you came, you're doomed to live in shame.
Great quote. Great quote.
I just want to follow up on what Omar was saying, because one of the things about Black History Month is that it's not limited to the days in February. Every day is a part of Black History Month, and it's bigger than that. Black history is everybody's history. And so in that situation where sometimes there's that stereotype that it's only about slavery or colonization, there is so much more. And there's a lot about it, about celebrations and acknowledging achievement. So daily aspects of people's lives, even someone who is not Black, there possibly something that you've done in your life has been made possible by someone who's Black, someone who has contributed or thought out a process. And yeah, that influence is there. And I think that's one of those moments where it's important to recognize and celebrate it, because it's a part of regular all history.
Yes.
So that's where I think.
I absolutely agree, and I often say that Black history is Canadian history. There's so many aspects of Canadian culture that Black contributions are integrated into the Canadian way of life. And I've had a conversation with an Indigenous colleague, and I'm by no means trying to speak for our Indigenous friends, but we've had a conversation about this. And when you think about our cultures separately or individually, the Indigenous culture, it's got a lot of negative, sad connotations and a lot of grievance and pity attached to it, as same with Black culture. But it's like, no, we don't want people to think of it that way. It's like joy and celebration, and what a strong community and foundation that we originally came from. Yes, I agree. Any thoughts, Jessica?
I agree as well. It's not just about highlighting struggles. I think it's about highlighting achievements. And I think that Black history kind of resembles like how we've become today as a race and where we are now. And I think that is extremely important to reflect on.
So this kind of leads into the second question, and why is Black history necessary? Do you think it's necessary, and why?
It's our opportunity for us to shape our narrative out there and properly place us within that lens of history and where we see ourselves in the future. Our story has to be written by us. And Black History Month gives you that opportunity, whether you're going to highlight an achievement or you're going to look into something that happened into the past and say, no, this is more an accurate representation, or even challenge certain conflicts or tensions within the Black community itself. It's that opportunity. You can put your voice out there and speak for yourself.
That's right. That's right. We need to take control of that narrative and own it. Very good.
So I kind of have a problem with the term Black History Month because I think it detaches us from our African history, our African roots. So part of the reason, those negative connotations that you say we share with our indigenous brothers and sisters, I believe it's associated with that. Because when you say Black history, well, hey, what is Black history on the continent? Where does it, here, where does it start? So I don't subscribe to that. I more see it as African history.
Right.
And there are many complexities, as you know, across the spectrum of the Black diaspora. So African, I believe, is a more uniform term. When I frame it that way, and that's the way I engage and speak with my kids, then I'm able to talk to them about pharaohs. I'm able to talk to them about many historical Black figures. You know, a few weeks ago, I was talking to them about Akhenaten, and Akhenaten was an Egyptian pharaoh, one of the most robust and beautiful pyramids that exist now was created by Akhenaten. Akhenaten was also credited with modern engineering. You know, recently I was watching something on National Discovery, and can you believe it? They're telling people that aliens actually came and gave Black people tools and knowledge, whatnot. So in a sense, it's kind of good because at least maybe they're Black aliens. So Black people is everywhere, even as aliens. So that's a problem I have with the term Black History Month. I think it kind of plays into a certain narrative and mathematics. You know, modern mathematics is credited with Pythagoras, but how many people know that Pythagoras was a student in Egypt, spent over 20 years studying art, studying philosophy, studying math? And I think all of those things, that's what we really need to focus on and teach a history as it should, but not necessarily the slavery, discrimination, segregation type of thing.
That is an excellent point of view, and it's actual real history, because Africa has often been known as the cradle of civilization. Egyptians, Phoenicians, and the Moors built civilization, and that's the actual history, not from the colonial lens. Post-colonial slavery is what we're known and identified with.
Yes.
Good point.
Thank you.
Good point. Any other thoughts?
No, my only thought was I would delete that channel from my watch list. I would just delete that channel. I'm like, no, I'm not watching that show again.
So here's a good question. So speaking of like eliminating these negative connotations, in light of what's happened in the last few years in the movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, how would you respond to a comment if somebody says, but all lives matter, or white lives matter? Because I've actually had this conversation with somebody before.
I think, like, from my experiences, people aren't educated and they don't understand what Black Lives Matter means. I've had to explain it even to some Black people, like, no, it doesn't mean that only Black Lives Matter are important. It means that Black Lives Matter are important too. Like, everybody is important. So I think I would start off by explaining that, and just like with police brutality going on in North America, especially like targeting Black people, that's why this movement has become. But it doesn't mean we don't think other races are like important or their lives aren't important. Just to like, I really think people are confused by that. So definitely hammering that.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on what Jessica was saying because, well, for me too, it's two types of responses. If someone says, all lives matter, I might actually just say, yes, I agree. And for all lives to matter, Black lives have to matter too.
Exactly.
And that only, there's this mystery word only that keeps appearing in people's minds, in some people's minds, that it's something that you're supposed to be better than. But if the white lives matter, that for me would be a very different response. I might spend some time trying to understand a little bit more of where they're thinking, but honestly, Troy, there's times you have to watch your energy in certain types of engagement, and if you've already reached this point that your purpose is either to rile me up or have me behave in some stereotypical way of being angry, I might just disconnect from that conversation. I might make some points, but I'm not gonna want to give that person the satisfaction to, triumph, all lives matter and prove my point. I've proved my point.
That's right.
So I find it depends very much on the context, where sometimes you can't have a conversation, other times you might have to just
step away.
Step.
That's a good point, and that's right. And you made a good point about we're not here to prove anything, and if you've gotten to that point in the conversation, you can't change that person's mind. So you have to be selective about the conversations you engage in. And Omar, I think you have something to say.
From an EDI perspective, and in an ideal world, all lives matter, right? So that's a no-brainer. But for those people who say they have problems with the Black Lives Matter, the statement itself, just look at the recent Toronto police report in 2020.
Yes.
And it came out that they said that the way that the law enforcement engage with Black communities, Indigenous communities, and other communities of color is heavy and it's disproportionate. So part of the reason why you see so many African and other people of color in problems with the legal system is because they're over-policed. Too much attention is paid for them. Even in a school where a child might wear clothing that you think is maybe inappropriate or behave in a certain manner, it is not dealt with consistent with the way they deal with other cultures. The police gets involved, and Black people react sometimes angrily towards the police, because in many jurisdictions the police force was created not necessarily to help in terms of policing, but the police force was created to protect them from us. And that's why the legacy of that still lives on today.
Which is unfortunate.
It is.
Last winter, I was taking a course as part of the Race Relations Certificate program, and it was called Discrimination and First Nations. That was the name of the course, and it was taught by a retired police commissioner. It was an online course. We were in COVID. And a lot of these statistics were included in the material, the course material in the textbook, and it brought a lot of things to light and was illuminating for me to understand and look at the root of where this is coming from and the disproportionate numbers. But I can say that I know some police forces, some municipalities are working towards a different perspective of community policing, where they're not there to create that divide of an us and them mentality and culture, but more of we are here to be members of an extension of your community. So hopefully we'll see some changes in that.
I think it will, because we need the police as well as the police need us. And Black people are not anti-police.
That's right.
It's just a manner in which the policing is done.
The manner is so important. The how to be part of that community, because right now that discussion is happening in London, where the police are asking to be back in schools as resource officers, and you can hear the questions and the concerns coming up again. And it's the how. That's what people are asking about, the how, or really should you be doing this?
That's right. And as EDI is such a hot corporate topic right now, most businesses or institutions or corporations or even services like the police force are including an EDI component and trying to look at things through an EDI lens and create training and awareness for their staff and employees. So hopefully there's more equitable lens serving our community. Any other thoughts before we move on? So speaking of some of these barriers, this is a good flow. What are some barriers, if you want to share, that you think you've faced being here in Canada as a person with melanated skin, or as a new Canadian, or as an immigrant even? Any barrier stories?
I think, for me, before living in London, I was in Saskatchewan. So, from the town we were in, it's a small rural town, myself and my husband were firsts. So I was the first Black person to work in the public library system, reference librarian. And it was just interesting, because this is not too long ago. So I had those situations where I made a deliberate choice always to wear this little tag that said library staff. I noticed that none of my coworkers wore it, but I did it all the time because people would assume I was just a regular customer or just a patron of the library. And in times when I can help you, I see someone clearly looking for something, and then I'd be like, oh, can I help? Are you looking for? No, it's okay, fine. Then I'll go and sit at the reference desk, which clearly places me in that position where if you need something, the same person would then come to the reference desk and ask, it's fine, I am gonna help you. I found the item or what you're looking for. So that comes up even from the perspective of my husband, dealing in a front-facing customer service role, that experience where you said next in line, and the person actually said, no, I'll wait on someone else because I don't know who speaks English. He actually got that said to him, and he was really surprised. You have those situations. I think one of the things, the difference is coming from a place like Jamaica where the majority of the population is Black. So teachers, doctors, lawyers, professors. And when you have children in that environment, they see that as a norm. When you have a child in high school or in elementary school, they had their own struggles where I had to spend time kind of explaining, why did that child do that? Why did someone stick pencils in my child's hair because they thought it was fun? And that's something I would not have, there are discussions I would not have had in a different setting, in a different country.
Right.
I found that I had to be explaining things a bit more, and I had to almost, that emotional labor was on me a bit more because I was trying to protect them. At the same time, I'm also trying to arm them to say, listen, some of this is really what's happening out there. It's not all roses and sunshine. So, yeah.
That is a very good point that I can actually relate to very strongly. That I've had conversations with my children that, one, white parents would probably not have to have, or two, I wouldn't have if I was not in a country where we are the minority. If I was in Trinidad or another country, that would this conversation even be necessary? Would my child have been treated that way? You're right. Omar?
So, yes, I've had similar experiences like Sheena. There was one particular school I was working in GTA. So I've worked in GTA before I moved here, and school never really gave us IDs like what we have here at Fanshawe. So you really have no way of identifying yourself as an associate of the company. And I remember going to one class and I had forgot my keys, and went to the security guard to ask him to open the door for me so I could get in and start my class, and he refused because he never believed that I was actually the instructor. So it took the students to actually go to him and say, yeah, it's late and he's our professor, we need to get into class. So that was really a low point for me because I'm like, I told you who I am. I'm being honest and being truthful, accept what I'm saying. These are, it shouldn't have to be the students having to come in and save the day, right? So those are issues that I probably would never have in my home country or something like that. But I think many of the issues that we face are based on ignorance. And I want to talk to people. So there are white people out there that have questions. You know, I don't think I'm pretty much of that intimidating guy. Approach me, talk to me, and yeah, I'll be happy to provide answers to you, because it is the ignorance between the two races that breeds a lot of this distrust, and that is what spills over into these unpleasant experiences. There's an old proverb in my country of Jamaica that says, "The jackass said the world is not level."
Yeah.
In essence, what it's meaning, the ass is a beast of burden. It carries a lot of load, and it has to walk very different terrain. So it's in the best position to tell you that the world is not level. So that translates to me to say, hey, it's not necessarily an equal playing field
For everybody.
but at the same time, I'm not going to use that as a distraction. I'm just going to work harder and prove myself that I belong, because in essence, I'm not really looking for any handouts. I don't want pity. I don't want you to give me an opportunity because I look a certain way or I'm from somewhere. I want to be judged, you know, the same manner, consistent with all the other persons are judged. And then everyone can decide from there.
You made a good point there. Something you just said is it's up to you to prove yourself. So I'm wondering, how can we remove that burden or that onus from the individual, and how can institutions like Fanshawe kind of work towards removing those barriers so it's not up to the individual to have to prove that they're worthy? Any suggestions or thoughts?
We'll start with the ladies.
Like
Go ahead.
a suggestion, I'm not sure if I can add to like what you're saying. I'm feeling like you need to prove yourself or work harder. I've had like, back where I'm from, it's a very small town with no diversity, like less than London. And there's been times where outside I was trying to like get the valve on my like car tire to come off so I could put air in my tire. And I couldn't get it off for whatever reason. I'm pretty weak. So I went up to this guy and I'm like, can you please help me? Like, I just was approaching him. He's like, oh no, like I'm not giving money to you. Like thinking I was like homeless. And I've had times where like, you know, me and my black friends just getting followed around the store or like getting made fun of in high school for my hair being big and just different things like that. And I feel like I've almost have this anxiety now to make first impressions with people, because I feel like I'm going to be like judged already based on like biases or stereotypes. So that definitely is a big thing, a big barrier that I face. Something that I could suggest, I'm not really sure, honestly. I think just more education is needed.
Awareness, conversations like this, opening the avenues to have conversation with all people, everybody. Like, let's share our truths and have a voice.
Yeah, I think in just picking up on some of what Jessica was saying, because at Fanshawe, especially if you're new faculty, where you want to get to know people, and part of that, even in understanding Fanshawe's role, some of the times you'd like to reach out to others, but you actually don't know where people are or just how to make a familiar face. I have been in Zoom meetings, and it's when someone's camera turn on, or I might pick up a name, and I go, oh, okay, this is someone I can reach out to. I see a face, and I go, oh, okay, that's Omar in a Zoom meeting. I'll tell him hi. Where I think some of the times, I think, especially when it comes to situations that students might experience, microaggressions or a form of harassment, whether staff, faculty, or student, how is Fanshawe managing that? And there's some obvious ones. People will, you know, issues if it's related to like obvious physical violence or sexual violence. But when it comes to those racial microaggressions and discriminations, okay, a student comes to me, where is my path? What do I do, right? And the thing is too, you come across this because you might be the person that student feels like, oh, I can trust you because you're a professor that's maybe similar background, or we have something in common. So I want to be able to help. Where are the tools? Or I can at least know this is the right direction or something. So that is where I find it's a little bit nebulous. I'm not sure exactly where Fanshaw's, clarity is on that. The only thing that I would just tag to that, last year, February, was the signing of that Scarborough Charter. And there was, in addition to like the senior people being there from Fanshawe, there was one black member of staff, I think the person was a dean. In just his welcoming remarks and things, he actually made that he's one of the few deans of color at Fanshawe. It was the first time I heard of that, in that capacity, in higher management. It's the first time I heard that. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that. Troy, it has that really weird feeling in your mind, like, so how am I supposed to get anywhere if that person is the one, or that is the two? How am I supposed to get anywhere if you're new? You just kind of gotten into teaching and understanding, this environment. Oh, there's one. Okay, you do start to question your own self. Okay, I don't know what. So it's those kind of that sort of uncertainty that I kind of wish there was more clarity on, more definitive action on.
Okay.
I think. Just to put some points on what both of you said, I think for a school like Fanshawe, where it's located, I think there are challenges in procuring human resources.
Okay.
Because I think the last census, someone was telling me, like the city of London had maybe less than 10,000 or 5,000 black people living here. So when you take that small pool of people, and let's say a college like Fanshawe maybe has certain opportunities, it's very difficult in many instances to find maybe people with certain unique skill set to really fit what you want to do, just by virtue of where you're located. So maybe providing more incentives that can pull people to the location. In terms of my personal experience, I think the college is doing a good job in terms of creating that atmosphere where people can feel welcome. In terms of what Jessica said, in terms of all these anxieties, I really don't have an ideal answer for you, because it is a question that a topic that I have conversation with my children, but I always try to tell them to draw on the spirits of the ancestors. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from our brothers and sisters from the First Nations, because you have something within you that you can call upon, that can really help you, even if you're the first, chart away. People might have certain perceptions out of ignorance or opinions about you. You don't really let it, hassle you. Just go in, do your thing, and do it to the best of the ability. It might take time, but over time, people will see you, people will recognize you, and that's the best way, I think, to move forward. That is something I think this current generation can learn from previous generations, because when they took us here, the connection to our roots, you talk to indigenous people, they talk about their relationship with their ancestors. That's what it was for you and I, and that's why I prefer the term African, because black takes us away from all of that. So I want you to reflect on the spirits of your ancestors, people that made a journey across the Atlantic, had to, kill themselves rather than being subject to certain types of behavior. And if they're strong-willed enough to do that, I think this generation, with all the tools and resources that it has the ability. So for 10, 20 years from now, we're not necessarily looking at a legacy of shame, but a legacy of accomplishments and achievement. And I think you're poised in a unique position to help change that narrative.
It's that sense of resilience, which also happens to be the theme for Black History Month this month. So you nailed it.
Resilience.
Resilience.
Yes.
I would just like to make a point further to what you were mentioning, Sheena. And this is very new. So I think we're still in the process of getting the messaging out to the Fanshawe community. But one of the many duties under the umbrella of my role here as anti-racism and inclusion specialist is to be first point of contact for any acts of discrimination, microaggression for students. So if you do come in contact with students that are experiencing some kind of bias or discrimination, you can reach out to the EDI office. I would be that first point of contact for outreach and intervention with student issues. And like I said, we're just getting that messaging out to the Fanshawe community, so I don't think it's very well known yet. This is a 6 month, 6 months into the position, so, but that's one of the things that we're working on and one of the mandates under my umbrella. Jessica, you had mentioned to me earlier in conversation a really interesting point. I wondered if you would like to elaborate a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah. So I came to Fanshawe in 2018. I've had over 60 professors, I believe, at this point. And in the summer, this is when I met Troy. That was the first time I've ever met a Black person employed, any faculty professor at Fanshawe. And then just recently, last semester, I did have a first Black professor. But I've just been here for so long. I've met so many people, and just not seeing anybody who looks like me or that I feel like I could relate to on a different type of level it's just a little bit disappointing. So that's something that's been big for me. And I was really excited to come to London, thinking it would be more diverse than where I am originally from in Chatham. So yeah, that's definitely.
So representation matters. It's
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
to removing some of those barriers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think representation is key, and as I said, Troy is probably in a position to speak better for the college, but I have seen changes. I've started here in 2016. When I told people I was moving to London, they're like, what? Where are you going? I try to educate them and say, hey, Black people have been living in London from the 17 or 1800s. But they're like, no. But you know what? I must say I've been well received by the city, well received by the college. The day I moved into London, the next day my neighbor came up to me and offered me a bottle of wine and told me, welcome to the neighborhood.
Wonderful.
See, I heard people talking all these stories. I've never had to encounter any of those. I'm not dismissing that they don't exist. But what I'm saying is that my experience has been a little bit different. But I do see where the college is trying to make the space a little bit more inclusive. I want you also to bear in mind, because of the numbers, we're so small. We're not really that a lot of people here. So, by virtue of the numbers, it is expected when I go certain places to do business that I won't see anybody that looks like me. But again, I just try not to let it intimidate me. And so far, I've had nothing but good experiences. We're here. I didn't know you before. Now you know me. So if there's anything I can help with along that pathway, I talk about a relationship with elders. By no means I'm an elder, but a little bit older than you, so I think I might have some advice that I could share with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Omar's a good father figure. And it really helps in building that sense of community. Communities, I'm not saying that like should stick with like, because I'm trying to promote diversity on campus, but it is good to have that sense of belonging to a community.
Yes, it really does help.
So one final thought in wrapping it up here. If you were giving advice on a Black Canadian that meant a lot to you, or somebody that you admire or were inspired by, who would that be?
I'll start.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not sure if you guys know Kia Nurse. She is a WNBA player from Ontario. She is Black, and she has used her platform to now, I think she's a sports analyst, I believe for TSN, not Sportsnet, TSN. Just seeing someone make their way up into something that I'm interested in, I'm in corporate communications, is very inspiring for me, just to see someone who looks like me like that and is doing a great job. Yeah.
Perfect.
Interesting you ask that question. I'm actually reading Wes Hall's book right now, the No Bootstraps. If you have bare feet, his whole story from coming from very poor conditions in Jamaica to, he's they call him the king of Bay Street, and everybody knows him from Dragon's Den. But I'm just reading his book now. That's one it kind of resonated with me. But who I've just gotten into is really understanding more about Viola Desmond. I'm gonna watch the play this weekend. I am going to watch it. I've gotten my kids involved in it. There's a whole conversation gonna be happening around it. I am so excited about that one.
I'm going as well this weekend. And
Oh,
Omar?
interesting. And while you're on that Viola Desmond, you know, a lot is not mentioned about her across the continent because I think our brothers and sisters to the south, they have dominated because they have
Narrative,
a bigger
right.
megaphone than ours. But you know, during the time when Rosa Parks, you know, did that resistance on the bus, she had the entire NAACP behind her.
Yes.
They were already putting up resistance. This was a lady that just out of nowhere just stood on her own without the backing of anything. So I think telling the story properly gives a little bit more context to that. Final point on that, Troy, Black people played a major role during the American Revolution.
Oh, yes.
So the British said, hey, if you're a loyalist and you fight for us in the American War, we can bring you to Canada and we'll give you land and we'll help set you up for success. Black people died defending the war out there in Niagara Falls. Black people lived here in London. They live in Chatham. All along the southern belt here. And today, we're not reflected in history as we should because many of them have been chased out of town. So for the fact that you and I are still here and we're still going through some of the same problems that they had, that speaks about resilience. And I think that's a fitting note for me to conclude what I'm saying. You know, Black Africa has great kings and queens, as you should know. Search your history and it will show. If you know not from whence you came, you're doomed to live in shame. And that's inspiration I want to leave with you today.
And I think that is a great note to end on. So thank you, Omar. I'm going to invite you to all of our guest talks because you're such an eloquent speaker. So that wraps up our EDI talks for today. I just want to mention that Fanshawe is actually running out a campaign for Black History Month for the first time this year, and we are theming it Black Brilliance, Black Resilience. Fanshawe celebrates Black History Month 2023. There's going to be a number of events taking place on campus, including here in the Library Learning Commons. We've had the support and partnership of many areas, the library, the FSU, and 106.9 The X. So look for RBM notices, posts on social media, and information and posters coming out about what's happening for Black History Month, what you can do, and how you can get involved. I would very much like to thank my panel of guests for joining me today. It's been a wonderful, inspiring, and uplifting conversation. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. If any viewers have thoughts that they would like to share, please feel free to reach out. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you can contact the EDI office at edi@fanshawec.ca. You're welcome to join us in March when EDI Talks presents Women's History Month, International Women's History Month. So on behalf of the EDI team, take care of yourselves and each other.